There's been a lot of criticism after the event of the political and the military leadership on both sides, I suppose, for the way that they conducted the war. And there's this image of lions led by donkeys and all the rest of it. I mean, is there much validity in that, do you think?
It's not the way that I would choose to look at it. Because of what I said about the preponderance of the defensive and the nature of industrialized warfare and the very contrary images of traditional combat, offensive warfare, conventional heroism with which people went to war, I would put it like this, that in 4 months in the autumn of 1914, Europe discovers industrialized modern warfare and a new form of siege warfare. Mentally, it takes the generals, the politicians, and also the soldiers 3 years to catch up. It's 1917, 1918 before they realize that they're really dealing with a different world. It's a sobering thought that faced with these sudden ruptures or shifts in history, it takes people a considerable amount of time to catch up. Therefore, the generals, I think, were faced with a situation in which there was no solution. I mean, it sometimes happens in history that there aren't answers to the questions which are posed, at least not in those terms. And if you kept on thinking about how do we break through the enemy line, how do we defeat them, how do we defeat the British and the French, or for the French, how do we get the Germans out of France, there is no solution in terms of the offensive. And yes, it's true, pointless offensives, and huge numbers of lives were lost as a result. In the French case, just to give you an example, the French lose over a half of their war dead before 1916's even begun, before the year of Verdun and the Battle of the Somme has even begun. It's in the autumn of 1914, at the outset of the war, that the losses are the highest. But what was the solution? There was no solution, and the generals simply kept on fighting the last war.
And I suppose that lack of a solution on the Western Front is why Churchill goes to Gallipoli, the soft underbelly of Europe, which he was to go on about in the Second World War as well. So at least I suppose he was thinking outside the box, to use that phrase. Yeah,
people were scrabbling for alternatives. In the German case, as you said before, you know, part of it is ramping up the technology, the gas attack at Ypres in 22nd of April 1915. For the British, of course, it's using naval power and trying to break the siege by going to the apparently undefended points in this case Gallipoli, a barren rocky peninsula in European Turkey. And of course the irony, but the proof of the argument is that trench warfare recreates itself within the space of 2 weeks on Gallipoli.